amazing. Yay.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. I'm so glad to see you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, or I guess
Oh,
afternoon for you.
yes. Just
Yeah.
12:04 here in Chicago.
Yeah. Well, before we even get started and share a little bit about some of the work that we've have to surprise everyone with, do you want to take a second and just introduce yourself to the Ashtikva community?
I am so excited to do that. So yes, Lana Manikowski. I am childless after 7 years of seeking parenthood through fertility treatments. And I live in Chicago with my husband and our fur child, Coco, who will probably make an appearance either verbally or visibly here at any point in this call. But
Can't wait to meet
yeah,
her.
I went through a 7 year journey, really wanting to seek parenthood, and in the end, it didn't result in a child. And I considered adoption. My husband and I considered adoption, and that ended up not being really where our heart was, as far as the process and the unknowns of adoption, and just putting ourselves through more of the unknowns of, is this going to work out? Is it going to result in us, really getting a baby? Or are we going to be like those movies, where you see the parents waiting at the tarmac and the baby never comes? So it was a hard decision, but in 2018, we decided that we were going to move forward without children. And it wasn't until 2020 that I really came out of my cocoon of being unsure of who I am and who I'm going to be as a woman without children.
Yeah, and I think that just as you're saying that, it brings to mind this concept that we speak a lot about of the concept of just. There is no just with fertility treatments, and there is definitely no just with adoption. It is opening your heart with hope, whatever journey one chooses, knowing that there's that possibility that it won't end in the way that we go into it hoping that it will. And being very real with yourself and talking internally and together as a couple to really see, is this something I can hold on to and hope, or does my heart need healing? And you shared it so perfectly, and something that I think a lot of us don't necessarily get framed. That a lot of this is an internal conversation of what can my heart hold,
Yeah,
and
well, I
what
think
what
it's
can I put
hard.
my
I think it's hard to allow yourself to have that space because the world is telling you to do things to
yeah.
increase your chances, to pray
Yeah.
harder, to relax more, to, not give it too much thought, like all these things that we are constantly pointing at ourselves as being the cause of why we're in the end result of what we're in, or
Mhm.
why we're here, or should I have gotten married sooner, or should I have tried sooner, like all these moments of regret that I think we don't see a lot of examples of. What does it look like to support yourself, or
Yeah.
to think about, like, if this ends up without a baby, can I still look at myself and feel proud of who I am regardless of the outcome?
Yeah. And something I've heard you say, and also read of yours, in our surprise that we're going to reveal very shortly, is this piece of that it's not light switch on, light switch off. That there is this process that one goes through, and giving oneself that space, that it's not one day I make this choice and tomorrow I wake up and I'm okay, is really respecting that it's a journey. And do you want to tell us a little bit more about how one respects oneself in that journey to find the healing, and not having that expectation of oneself that, like, I make this choice and tomorrow I will be okay and my life will be where I want it to be, but rather, what are some steps one could take as one progresses from 2018 to 2020?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think a lot of it is being okay not having all the answers yourself. I think we have spent a lot of time relying on the medical community and our fertility treatments and our protocols to validate that what we're doing is enough, or that it worked right, or that we did it right. And so for me, I just thought, okay, well, if I hang on long enough, time will heal all wounds. We hear that all the time, like time. And yeah,
Yeah.
maybe things get easier, and there's more time in between emotions when you're going through things. But really what I have found is that it's okay to seek assistance and to seek
Mm.
help and to seek support and to say, I need more for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And when I left my journey without a child, I really questioned, like, what's my purpose as a woman if I am not able to raise and nurture and create life? Like, what does that mean about me? And so I think for the people that are in that kind of in between is look for the resources. They are there. Like, I know I can speak from the things that I've created. I've created from a place of not having what I needed.
Yeah.
And when people read my book or, they work with me in my coaching program, they're like, oh my gosh, like you are the first person that I've ever heard tell a story about me that doesn't even know me. And that doesn't come from me being, a mind reader.
Yeah.
That comes from saying I needed that same thing too,
Yeah.
and being willing to create it and have someone say, you know what, I need the same thing you needed, and here it is.
Yeah. It's that sense of being the one instead of realizing that there is a world of so many ones
Yes.
in this experience, and leaning in and finding that support and the amazing piece that you created, these resources that didn't exist until now, and now they are there. And your book, your wonderful book, do you have a copy next to you? Do you want to show everyone?
I don't, but I'm gonna get. I came out here. I'm gonna walk you through my house. I'm gonna go
Okay,
get it
wonderful.
because. Oh
Amazing.
no, it's right here. I knew I had it. I knew I had it close by. It's right here. My
Amazing.
baby.
Your baby. So now
I,
what?
So now, yeah, I call it baby number two. Baby number one is my podcast, which I launched in 2021
Mhm.
and had, it now has 188 episodes, I believe.
Wow.
But it was kind of like my first baby, the first thing that I felt like I birthed with my story and with all the experience and the heartache that I had, like to be able to go and tell my story publicly. And then number two is now my book. So now what? So I'm really proud of it. It came out in April, and when it went up on Amazon, it was number one new book in the
Wow.
fertility and infertility categories like the first day. And I was like,
Wow.
woo. But then I was like, well, of course it is, because who the heck else is writing about this stuff? Like nobody else is creating resources that aren't a like sympathy card. And that's like
Yeah.
the other part. Like what I like to show my cover because it's like very vibrant. And when I was working with my cover designer, I was like, I don't want it to be like watercolor, like washed out, like wah wah. I just was
Yeah.
so sick of the sad vibes being portrayed when I talked about my story ending up without a child. And I was like, I want this book to be something that somebody walks into a bookstore or Barnes and Noble or sees it online and is like, oh my gosh, like excited to read it, that it's more gravitating. So
I love
that's
that.
baby
And
number two.
that's so beautiful. And so appreciate you picking it up and showing it to all of us. And I think that I love that you call it baby number one and baby number two. I think that goes to that first question that you asked yourself, and that you posed to us to think about is, what is my purpose? Can I find a way, in essence, to nurture and bring something into this world that isn't necessarily a child, but is an iteration of that same compassion, that same love, that same meaning that's going to leave a mark on this world in a meaningful way. And so I thank you for sharing that with us. And what was in your heart and in the way that you describe it, is that how you think of it and feel of it?
I do. I really do, because it is a representation of me. It has so much of me in it, although it might not be in DNA and biological material. It is really myself and my story and a way to nurture and help others grow
So
through
beautiful.
the book's pages. And the way that I designed the book, I purposely created it to be something that you don't have to read front to back. Like the
Mm.
sections of it, the chapters are super short, maybe like 4 or 5 pages a piece, but they're relevant to things like how to feel connection in your marriage when you thought that children would be something that you'd be doing and raising to together as a couple, how do you still find that connection point and that excitement for life when it's, just the two of you?
Yeah.
How to handle baby showers. And
Mhm.
there's parts, the book is just segmented in a way that people can read it and not have to, start to finish go through it. They could
Yeah.
say, oh, there's a holiday going on, and how do I show up to a family holiday when I don't have the children to pass the traditions down to,
Yeah.
or the
That's a
legacy
big
that
one.
I think I create
Mhm.
through, my story and having a human life. Like, how can I still show up to holidays and still create new traditions, maybe that my family didn't celebrate before, and people are going to remember it to be my tradition instead of, my grandparents' traditions, things like that.
And that's such a beautiful way of thinking about it. I think that two things I'm hearing from you is number one, you can find joy. There are other ways joy isn't directly and only correlated to having a human baby in this world, and that there are ways to bring that love and nurturing even to others that weren't necessarily the individuals you initially intended to bring it to, but taking that same love that you've built in your heart that you've nurtured for so long and saying, okay, I'm not having the opportunity to share it the way I wanted to, but I get to share it nonetheless. I'm going to seek those ways of sharing it. And obviously, it's never going to be a one size fits all. And there might be some people who still can't show up, but that there's the way to rewrite the narrative and say, I'm showing up differently. I'm not showing up how I wanted to, how I expected to, but I can walk myself through that and say, I still want to show up. How can I show up? And
Mhm.
that piece is so meaningful of being able to rewrite one's expectations and one's narrative so one still could find joy.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think it's hard because, let's be honest, like for majority of our lives, we just thought that that's what makes you a complete woman.
yeah.
And there's a lot of deprogramming risk in believing something that maybe others have never experienced, or others have not found their meaning, purpose, joy, however you want to see it, through something beyond children. And there's a risk we take as the people who are seeking that to say, like, oh, like, can I believe or find or create this thing for myself that the people around me have never experienced, and still truly feel connected to it without being like, oh, it's a smokescreen for something else that, I just need to act like I'm okay, but really
Yeah.
deep down I'm not. And I think that is like the most beautiful part of the story, and the beauty that I see from working with women who have been down that path of wanting to be moms and not being able to, is to see what they're able to find in their lives that is meaningful beyond children.
Yeah. And something I'm thinking about just as you're talking, um, I know that this is something that you found after, but now that you have found it and you're sharing it with those who are on this journey, are there pieces of what you have found that you would go back and teach yourself in that 7 year journey that may have brought more joy into that
Mm.
space that would have allowed you to both pursue in that moment that journey that you were on, but also simultaneously allowing yourself not to be consumed by
Hmm.
just the journey itself and finding a piece of this joy that you have found now and kind of carrying it along with you for those who are still in the journey and not yet sure where it's going to lead.
Yeah, well, I think probably the thing that stands out most prominently for me was that comparison of having friends going through IVF, or friends who are popping out kids that seemingly so easy, and to look at yourself and say, what am I doing wrong? There's a lot of like self-blame, and realizing that the journeys aren't always going to be parallel to the people around you. And of course, it's heartbreaking
Yeah.
when, somebody that I have my best friend who was really the one who pulled me along and like encouraged me to go through IVF. And she ended up with biological identical twins. And, you know, it was IVF, but she had, the embryo split, and here she had, identical twins through IVF. And I was like, well, how does that happen? Like I can't even get one and she's having twins. But being like, I just had to stop comparing my story and pointing fingers at myself that it must be something wrong with me, that I'm not getting the same outcomes of the people around me. And I think if I were to go back, it would just be like, okay, I just need to stay in my lane. I'm just going to focus on seeing the things that I'm showing up doing every day,
Yeah.
and not pointing and putting a spotlight on the things that aren't working out the way that I thought that they were going to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the most important piece that you've shared is that piece of like, it's not your fault. It is no one's fault that this is happening. It is beyond our control. We're doing our best, and the focusing on that reality. I think the language is so blaming. Failed.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
a cycle fails,
Oh,
when you experience a loss, like, what did I do that I failed? I've done everything right. And when we think about failing, it's failing a test. And when you fail a test, it's because you didn't study hard enough. But you did not pursue your journey hard enough. That's the language is so self deprecating in how it's used. So it creates this narrative in our mind that it must be something I'm doing that's wrong. And that piece that you pointed out that's just so important is that no, you've done nothing wrong. It's not your fault. And the person who did get maybe what you wanted or more than you even wanted, they didn't do it better.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think also too, there is a point in our journeys. I know I'll speak, from my personal experience, where you become jealous and judgmental of like how your friends are parenting, how they're acting, how they're treating their bodies, are they drinking a glass of wine when they're pregnant? And it would just unravel me, because here I was feeling terrible about what was happening for me, and then feeling terrible that I was a terrible friend, because like what friend sits there and judges their friends or talks about their friends to their husband because they're like, oh my God, I can't believe this one's doing that and that one's doing this. And even this is beyond like friends who were going through fertility treatments, but just being
Yeah.
like, can you believe that they're, raising their kids this way? And it was this cycle that I just saw myself judging, judging, judging. But really, what I was doing was judging myself, and it was showing up in judgment for others. And there was so much of that to unpack, and to just allow myself to say, like, of course you feel jealous. Of
Yeah.
course you feel like, gosh, if I had the opportunity to be a mother, I might have, I might be doing that differently. You don't
Yeah.
know, like
No.
you don't
Yeah.
know. And it's like easy when you don't have the physical thing in front of you to paint this picture that like looks perfect because you're not living the
100%.
life or walking the walk. But
Yeah.
there was so much of me that I felt bad about
Mhm.
myself, because I was turning into an angry,
Mhm.
judgmental person that I
Mhm.
knew that wasn't who I wanted to be, but I didn't know how to be any different.
Mm. And I think that that piece also, that like that's first piece that you validated it. Like, of course, you're gonna feel this way. Of course, it's so hard to be on the outside looking in and wanting, and all these emotions are just so normal. And I think so important to keep validating that for
Yeah.
oneself.
Yeah.
And first and foremost, before looking to take that next step of change, to say like, this isn't coming because I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
I'm a person in pain. A person in pain, yes, this may not be where I want to land and live, but in this moment, I'm experiencing that pain. So right now, I'm
Mhm.
going to just hold that space. And then the next step will be when I'm ready to now take that next path and work through where I want to be for me, not because of them, but because of me, because I want joy. And it seems
Yes.
that that really is the fundamental piece, that if through everything that you've shared, it's that ultimate goal of, I can be happy, I can find joy. It is not only directly correlated to what my body can or cannot produce.
Yeah.
There are so many ways for me to find that joy, and I deserve it. And I love that you love yourself enough to say that I'm worthy, and therefore I'm going to invest in me. And I think that that's the message that, regardless of where we are on our journeys, like we all need to be reminded we are special, we are worthy, we deserve to invest in us first and foremost. And whether that is by connecting to you for coaching, getting a book that feels right, connecting with a therapist, getting a pedicure, whatever that starts and that feels like, just reminding ourselves that we deserve everything and we deserve joy and we deserve to be happy and we should invest in ourselves. And yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard to sometimes know that because, at least in my experience, and I often ask when I meet women who have left their fertility journey or fertility clinic without a baby, what resources were you offered?
Yeah.
And time and time again, I mean, I just have chills right now thinking about it. Like most people, I think I've had two people in the several years I've been doing this tell me that they were offered support through a counselor or a therapist. And to think about our journeys and the emotional toll and the years that we put into something, I think about a cancer patient, somebody who has a terminal illness. Like there was always a resource offered and
Yeah.
always something, even if it's the book Tuesdays with Maury, like that
Yeah.
always sticks in my brain. Like,
Yeah.
but to leave a journey that is you're so closely tied to and you're talking to the
Yeah.
clinic every day, and it's like I remember like there was
Yeah.
this huge void, like when the phone calls end and you don't have a next cycle to start preparing for or a next
Yeah.
something to be doing, there is just like the world goes silent. And it's hard to think that there's more people like you because if there is, why are there not more resources? And that's
Yeah.
really another motivator for why I started my podcast, why I wrote the book, because when I never heard from my clinic after that last phone call, which offered me resources for surrogacy and resources for adoption, I thought, well, gosh, I must be one of few because there'd be more established in the
Yeah.
treatment pathway for the patients or in the conversations if they just brought it up and said, hey, I know this might be a lot for you to think about remaining childless, but if that ends up being your route, like I want you to know we can still support you. We have places to refer you. We have resources for that as well. Like had that been part of the continuum of care conversation, I think women would start to see like I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
There are supports. I haven't failed because there's other, people out here who are needing this same support. That's why it was created.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so should we reveal our surprise?
Yeah. I can't wait to
Um,
see.
so I should have printed it so I could like show it to everyone.
Yeah.
Lana, together with Kenzie, worked on this most incredible TICFA toolkit. That was, I want to say, purely a baby of love,
Yes.
that was made to make sure that in addition to all the wonderful resources that Lana already has created to support individuals through this journey, it's another one that says you aren't the only one going through this. It is a resource to help one heal one's heart and guide oneself through this journey a little bit as one starts to contemplate what this life looks like in this next phase. And hopefully something we're going to get into fertility clinics so that when that conversation happens, it's here is a resource. And here's some information about Lana and her podcast and her book and coaching so that you really don't need to be the only one going through this so that you know that the path has been trailblazed for you. And so I will drop the link for the TICFA Toolkit up in stories later today. It is on our website. It is truly a labor of love. And you could read it in every word. And I'm just so grateful to you, Lana, for facilitating it, creating it, and making sure that this path continues for those who are contemplating and pursuing a life without children and one filled with joy and happiness and community. I think that before we close off, I got one last question for you, and then we'll let you share your final thoughts.
Yeah.
We spoke a lot about the self, the individual going through it, but we're surrounded by community. And I think that, especially since the self doesn't necessarily know how to cope through this, community doesn't know what to do with it, right?
Mhm.
So, what is the best piece of advice, or one piece of advice that you would share with the friends, the family, the community surrounding that individual, that couple on this journey to living child free? What is something or some things that we can do to show up?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what
I'm
should we
glad you
do?
brought this up
Yeah.
because it's big in my platform is, the things that people say when you're childless and how to respond to them being on,
Mhm.
my side of things. But, for the people out there that are wanting to support is to not give advice. I know that, for the people that we love, we often want to find solutions and we want to be the one to create the opportunity for someone to have their dream come true. But just believing that your loved person is doing whatever they can and what they possibly can, and just being there to acknowledge them for what they're doing, to me is very much more important than asking for suggestions or telling someone what they should be doing or how they should be eating or living or praying or things of that sort.
Yeah.
And I think just asking people, like, what can we do today to make you smile? What's one thing I can do, like, next week, like, let's go do something? Or what do you want to do? Because I feel like for so much of this journey, you are just a robot, like, for good or for bad. Like, you just are following. At least for me, I remember, like, when I was going through IVF, it was more printed out. I'm sure
Yeah.
protocols are more electronic now where you can put stuff in your calendar, but there used to be like this printout, and it was like
Yeah.
all the times for my medications, and I felt like every part of my day was robotic in me following an
Yeah.
action. And just to have someone show up and be like, let's go and just get out of here for a second and go do something fun for the next hour.
Yeah. It's the being remembered and being thought of. Yeah. That's beautiful. So before we end, any last thoughts that you want to leave the Ishtikva community with?
Well, I really want to acknowledge you and the community for supporting women like us and realizing that we are worth offering resources for, creating new tools, creating conversation around, because, we're all women who are out here just trying to do our best. And whether your best ends in a child or your best ends in a book or a podcast or a story or whatever it is, just realizing that we're not forgotten is, like, to me, why I said yes to helping with the toolkit and doing the work that I'm doing with you, because it's so important for women like us to be remembered and acknowledged. So thank you.
Thank you. And this is the beginning. This
I
is
hope
the
so.
beginning of a conversation, the beginning of resources, of making sure that, as you said, everyone is remembered and that
Yeah,
everyone realizes how important they are to us, because they truly are. So this is the beginning.
great. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for the conversation and for the invitation to collaborate with you. It really means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for inspiring.
Yes.
Have a beautiful day.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.